Announcements. Art just came in here, and so this is Art. I'm speaking speaking for the elders here. They asked me to remind you, those of you with kids in our 6th grade classes and down, that our policy is that we'd like to have you pick up your kids, so your kids don't just get turned loose. The teachers would like you to pick up your kids. You'd probably like to make sure you know your kids are being taken care of. So just a reminder, at the first bell, shortly after the first bell, if you need to go get your kids, feel free to do that, because teachers don't want to have to sit there with them and feel like they shouldn't just turn them loose. And you know the drill. So there, I did it. Also, for you men, it is time to get registered for our men's rally. This is a rally again this year. We're staying at the building, not a retreat. And this is for all area men. So if you have a connection at Boise or Caldwell or Nampa or anywhere, that somebody who wants to drive here, Darren Williamson is our speaker. Darren's coming from over in the Portland area. And Darren, I believe, is bringing a couple of guys with him. So this is open for everybody. We've alternated years between the rally and the retreat, and the facts are facts that we are averaging about 40 more guys when we stay here. So we're going to do it 2 years in a row instead of going to Trinity Pines. But Darren has a passion for families and men being leaders, men being men. And he and I talked several months ago about what he wanted to do as a topic, and he said, I've got this material on from 1 Corinthians, whatever that verse is, quit ye like men, 15 maybe somewhere. But anyway, so then we got back with him, and I was like, let's go ahead and do that material. He goes, I don't have the material. It's just something I've been really working on for a long time. So this is new material that he's passionate about, which to me is a really cool thing. It's not some guy bringing some canned stuff that he's done 1,000 times, which nothing wrong with that either, because if you're good at it, you're good at it. But anyway, so that's the spiel for men's rally. You can text Men24 to the text to church number or whatever it is. Or I'll also put up a good old-fashioned sign-up sheet out there here before long, probably Monday. So if that's your preference, do that. Just tell me. I'll put you on the list, whatever you need to do. Okay, so we're going to carry on with Psalms. We're switching gears on the Psalms for this morning for the rest of the quarter. But before we jump into that, John's going to lead us in a prayer. Any particular prayer requests this morning? We've got a giveaway coming up a couple weeks, men's rally a couple weeks after that. It's like, it always seems to me like we hit about the 1st of March and we shift into gear and things start happening. LTC happening all through this whole time, so that's a great blessing. Anything else? John, we're letting you off easy.
Our Heavenly Father, we truly are thankful for the opportunity that we have to gather here this morning and to worship and be together. This time, Father, was mindful of this class that we're here to learn your word more about what you want us to make sure that we work hard towards doing your will, both in action and in words. Father, we're so thankful for the Psalms that you laid out that gives us so much guidance, so much direction, insight to your mercy, insight to direction and oversight that you have creation. Father, we're pleased to be part of everything and love that you give out, knowing that you created us, and you're going to give us the opportunity to have be with us in this class and do attendance and support information that he's studying. Father, look at it and think about ways that we leave here. We're reminded in our hearts of something that listed in your word that we can definitely share with us. Be with us, guide us, and direct us.
Amen. Thanks, John. Okay, as you're aware, we have been looking at the Psalms, a variety of Psalms, through this lens, the idea of the Psalms of orientation, where everything's just going well. I'm excited about God. I'm excited about my relationship with God. Just happy that God is God, and that's a good thing. But then I don't know where I even found this, but I think this is a very, very applicable graphic. Then life happens. Things get in the way. Things happen in our lives, and we find ourselves in a place of disorientation. And that's where we've spent the last couple of weeks, or last few weeks, the Psalms of Lament, whether it's personal lament or national lament. Just those times where we question God. And as it says there, we cry out to God. We're not sure even what to ask God sometimes. And we've seen in these Psalms, there's the questions of how long and why. What's going on? Where are you in all of this, God? Well, today we're going to move, like I said, for the rest of the quarter, we're going to move to the Psalms of reorientation. Now, some of the disorientation Psalms, we even saw that moment in them where the mentality, the thinking of the psalmist starts to shift. These Psalms for the rest of the quarter have shifted. It's where the writer has this moment, like I've called it the deep breath moment, where the psalmist realizes, I can't fix this. I'm giving this to God. And we cry out to God, and we praise God. He helps me when I'm weak. And we have that time where it's time we begin to crawl out of the pit. We begin to climb up from where we were, that moment of despair, or maybe that moment is several weeks, several months of despair. But we begin to climb up out of that. And really, to say it better, it's when God reaches down and starts to pull us out of that pit. Now, what's interesting about these Psalms is these are different from the Psalms of orientation. Every pit experience that we make it out of, and Lord willing, almost all of us have had one of those that we have made it out of. I hope you're not in one of those situations that you feel like you can't get out of, but you might be, because that happens too. But when we move from that place of disorientation to new orientation or reorientation, it's a different experience. We're going to talk about why, but I want to ask you, before we talk about it, why would reorientation be different from just the Psalms of orientation? I'm going to give you a minute to think about that even. Why is it a different state of mind?
Hindsight's 2020.
What do you mean? Hindsight's 2020 is what he said.
You've gone through disorientation and you have a reason for new orientation.
You've gone through it, now you have a reason for new orientation.
When you're going through troubles and tribulations and stuff, you start learning certain things. And so when you come back, sometimes you have a different point of view.
Yeah. Okay, so what you both basically said is you have a perspective shift. You have that ability. You have that. Sometimes you don't think of it this way, but you have that gift now of being able to look back and see, this is where I was, and now I'm in a new place with God. That isn't to say that being in a place of positive orientation where everything's good, there's nothing wrong with that. If you can live your life there, that's awesome. I mean, there's very few people who can do that, and those people are that's a great gift where you don't feel like you ever fall down in that pit, and you feel like you don't ever have that despair. But once you've been there, and we'll look at a couple of Psalms today that we see that, once you've been in those difficult times, you do look at God differently. You look at God in more of a rescuer kind of a way, and that's really what we'll see this morning. In these Psalms, the writers have moved from that bad place, and they're moving out. And again, it's not a, wow, God is so great, and everything's perfect, and I love Him now. It's, wow, I was in a bad place, and now, thank goodness, God's pulling me out. Eric. Yeah.
There's a depth to that relationship that wasn't there before.
Yeah.
Trust,
Yeah, very good. Yeah, if you didn't hear what Eric said, what he said is the idea is any relationship, you have those difficult moments, and when you come through those together, the relationship is is usually stronger, has more of a depth to it. Turn to Psalm 73. That's the first one we're going to look at this morning. Psalm 73, in my opinion, is the picture of the reorientation psalm. Because you'll see in this psalm, you see it all. It is the roller coaster ride of trying to be connected to God. But what the psalmist sees here eventually is that the pit's not it. Yeah, I made that up. I thought that was kind of cool. That this is not the end. This is not where I have to stay. This is not where life ends. This is not where God is going to leave me. What we see in this psalm is very, very human. We'll get to that in a second. This is definitely a psalm where we see the psalmist see God as a rescuer. Does somebody want to read for me? Read Psalm 73, verses 21 through 26. I'd read it myself, but I want to hear what another translation says, and then I'll share you what mine says. Verses 21 through 26, anyone.
When my soul embittered, when I was pricked in heart, I was brutish and ignorant, I was lacking peace toward you. Nevertheless, I am continually with you. You hold my right hand. You guide me in your counsel, and afterward you will receive me in glory. Whom have I in heaven but you? And there is nothing on earth that I desire beside you. My flesh and my heart may fail, but God in the strength of my heart and my portion forever. For behold, those who are far from you shall perish. You put an end to everyone who is unfaithful to you. But for me, it is good to be near God. I have made the Lord God my refuge, that I may tell all your works.
Okay. What did you see just in those verses? What are the emotions? What are the feelings the psalmist is sharing?
It's how we are when we're going through. We're so conflicted. Like we're angry, we're mad and patient at God, but at the same time we know He's the one that takes care of it all.
It is the Christian experience. He in those few verses he says all of that. I'm mad, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, and notice he says when I became embittered. He says this was in the past, but you can almost still hear it. When I became embittered in my innermost being, I was wounded. Here's what my Christian Standard says this, verse 24. I was stupid. I was stupid and didn't understand. I was an unthinking animal toward you. And then he says, verse 26, my flesh and heart may fail, but God is my strength. Verse 27, those far from you will certainly perish. You destroy all those. You can almost hear him going, you'll get those people. But okay, I'm sorry, but God is my, it's that, this is how we feel. That we go through those moments where we know we're down. I mean, he's not saying, yeah, God said I was embittered and upset, but I guess I was. He says I was. I was angry. I was embittered. I was a stupid person toward God, toward the people around me. But you can hear in those few verses, now there's some joy. But it's God who pulled me out of it. It's God who brought me to a better place. I'm not asking, but I'm asking, have you been there? I mean, I think we've all been there. In those moments where I just don't get this. I don't understand what's happening. I'm mad at the world. Now, and we'll look through this in a second, and you'll see he is literally mad at the world. But we know what that experience is like, I think, for the most part. But we also know what it's like when you do feel yourself come out, when you let God pull you out of it, when you grab a hold of God and maybe somebody else, you have some support that helps you come out of that. You have a change of circumstance, or maybe it's just a change of perspective, which we'll get to in a second. And like I said, maybe that's where you are. I don't know everybody's situation. But this psalm, just in and of itself, to me, really speaks to this whole idea that we are going to have these moments where we're going to ask, is this all worth it? I mean, that's what he says throughout this whole psalm. He asks, he looks at what the world he sees, and he kind of questions it. Look back at the very beginning of this. And when I say look back, let's find some assistance. So we can look. Because like I said, this psalm runs the whole gamut of everything's good, everything's bad. Start in verse 1. God is indeed good to Israel, to the pure in heart. But as for me, my feet almost slipped. Almost. My steps nearly went astray. Okay, so first couple of verses, it seems like he's all right here. He's like, there was a time things weren't great, but now I'm good. And then he says, verse 3, for I envied the arrogant. I saw the prosperity of the wicked. And here for me, what I hear is, he says, but my feet almost slipped. My steps nearly went astray because I envied the arrogant and I saw the prosperity of the wicked and those stupid, stinking people. You can see him kind of slipping back down here as he goes through this. They have an easy time until they die and their bodies are well fed. They are not in trouble like others. They're not afflicted like most people. Therefore, pride is their... Does he sound like he's okay? He doesn't sound like he's given up on this yet. But isn't that who we are? God, I'm really going to be faithful for this week. I know I've struggled with my envy. I've struggled with my boss, how much I can't stand him. But I'm going to be better because you're my rescuer. And I know he's going to get it in the end because he deserves it because he's such a pig. And then you kind of go, oh, wait, sorry. That's what you see here. You see the reality. Look, keep going down through here. Verse 11, the wicked say, how can God know? Does the Most High know everything? He's even saying, these people don't even honor you, God. Yet you expect me to deal with them properly. When I tried to understand all this, verse 14, I'm afflicted all day, punished every morning. Doesn't sound like he's better. Verse 13, did I purify my heart and wash my hands in innocence for nothing? There it is. Is it worth it? I've tried to live the way you want me to live, God, and it doesn't seem like it's even worth it. For I'm afflicted all day, verse 14, punished every morning. If I decided to say these things aloud, I would have betrayed your people. Isn't that us right there? How you doing this morning? Oh, good, I'm good. When really you're going, I'm ticked off at everybody. I'm mad at life. I have this situation going on. How are you doing? Oh, good, good. If I say it out loud, then it makes everybody upset. This is the roller coaster of the Christian life right here. Verse 16, when I tried to understand all of this, it seemed hopeless until I entered God's sanctuary. Then I understood their destiny. And then he goes on to describe what he sees as God's going to do with these people. He's upset because the world is how it is. He's envious, it seems like. He says these people don't follow you, yet they prosper. These people don't treat other people right, yet you expect me to deal with them in a proper way. Like I said, I think we can all relate to these feelings. Maybe not the depth, maybe not the gravity. I don't know. You decide that. But what's the answer for him? He says it right there in verse 16. He goes, I couldn't figure it out, but I came into the Lord's sanctuary. This is that deep breath moment where he just says, I'm not going to figure this out. Isn't that a hard realization for us to make? That here's how I'm going to figure, here's this problem, here's what I'm going to do, and then we have to go, I'm not going to fix this. I'm going to enter into the place where God is, and I'm going to try and feel better about it. Dana.
It's interesting in verses 21 and 22 when he's making his confession. My soul is embittered when I was pierced in heart. I was brutish and ignorant toward you. I was like a beast toward you. That's almost saying I've become just like those people I hated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's saying that I'm surrounded by these kind of people to the point that I kind of gave up. I started acting like they did. Because, it works for them.
I have a little different than that. You really realize
Mhm.
just so front that, because we all do, but the fact is, they don't have God, and He did, and He does. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In other words, you could look at the people that are, they seem that they're all, have everything, but they could have people with cancer, they could have kidney stones, they just don't show it. I know it's a little difference on that.
Oh, no.
I know what you're saying, but
No, what Linda's saying is that her perspective is maybe what, and I think that's where he is at the end of this. What she's saying is that maybe he gets to the point where he looks back and goes, well, everybody has their own problems. And they may act like everything's great and everything's perfect, but I know it's not. But ultimately, the difference is he has God and they don't. And that is really where this ends up. He ends up in this moment where he has that perspective shift. What do I mean by that? When you're in that pit of despair, when things aren't going your way, how does our perspective shift? How can it shift? Thinking of it differently? How?
Instead of, well, they have this and that and stuff, you know, but they don't have God.
Yeah.
Here's the thing is like you can control nobody but yourself.
Right.
And then you kind of, so you vent, and then you go, wait, I'm looking at this the wrong way. I can't control them, but I can control me.
Yeah,
And
you
start trying to look at it.
you vent. In fact, that's the word I had in there. He just vents a whole lot here. And then you look at it differently. What does that mean? Your experience is a little different? Okay, so twice we've heard the word control. That I think is a big deal. I know it is a big deal for us. Because I can't be the only one who feels like that. Things need to go a certain way, and I need to be able to shift things and make them happen the way I need them to happen. I mean, I think we're all like that sometimes. This perspective shift, and you've all said it in a little different way, we've got to take our eyes off of us. And that's where he seems to be. I mean, he's looking at the world, and like I said, he even comes back to it a little bit. He goes, but I'm in your sanctuary, not like those people who are going to get what they deserve, man. But anyway, but God, I'm with you now, and you're my rescue. So it's taking our eyes off of us, taking our eyes off of our problem. You even said it's about what they have. We have to take our eyes off other people sometimes too. I mean, not in a calloused way where we don't think about other people. I'm just saying we can't focus on them. Sometimes we can't even focus on me. We have to just focus on God and say, whatever this is, I'm okay with it because ultimately I'm there with you. You're there with me. And the conclusion it seems he comes to is kind of like what Linda just said. These people may seem like they have it all, but he realizes they don't. Because he has God. He has God to see him through all of this. And he's humbled, it seems like, in this moment. I mean, he calls himself a stupid animal, so then that's humbling yourself quite a bit. But he pours out his heart. And he's honest about it. And he sees the grumbling that he's doing. He sees where his heart is off. And then he says, and this is actually the main reason I wanted somebody else to read this, because I just love the way this is phrased. In verse 25, who do I have in heaven but you? Most translations say, whom have I in heaven but you? I think that sounds really poetic. That sounds cool. Who do I have in heaven but you? And I desire nothing on earth but you. Okay, it's obvious what the words there. What does he mean by that, in your opinion? There's nothing those people have, no advancement, no bank account, no education, nothing anybody else could have that beats my relationship with God. Man, isn't that where we all want to end up? I mean, where we can say no matter what is happening around me, I'm good with God and God's good with me. And that's tough. I mean, like I said, this is very much the Christian experience right here. But the beauty of that is that once we've had that, once we've tasted that, once we've had that experience of feeling close to God, we can remind ourselves how great that is. We can remind ourselves, no matter what this situation is, what's going on in my world, God's there to pull me out of this pit, and I can reconnect with God, and I know how great that is. I know what that's going to be, what that offers me. Eric. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's that, I mean, it very much parallels Jesus' prayer in John 17. Sanctify them by truth. Your word is truth. I'm not saying take them out of the world because they got to be there. I'm just saying protect them. I mean, that's what this is, that the psalmist is saying, I'm not out of this situation. I'm not ignoring these people. Maybe that is what he's saying. I'm not going to be separated from these people. This is the world I live in. But I have to shift my eyes and focus on God. Whom in heaven do I have but you? There's no. I mean, I just love that phrase. There's nothing on earth I desire like I desire you. I mean, that's the point. That's the goal of these Psalms of reorientation, where we realize, yeah, we were in a bad place. Things went sideways for me for a while. But look what God has done. Look where I'm back. And like Eric said a while ago, that strengthens, that kind of deepens that relationship. Our understanding of what God can do for us. Okay, any other thoughts on Psalm 73 here?
Just that the word that's jumping out at me now is in verse 24, where the phrase is your plan. You know, when you're deep in that pit and we can't see a way out. Finally, we start to realize that God does have a plan. It's hard to remember that He does have a plan when we're in the middle of it. But He says, "You guide me with your plan, and afterward receive me to glory." So if we can just hang on.
Yeah.
It gives us such hope to know that He does have a plan. We may not be able to see it right now.
Right.
We will come out in the end. And the only thing we have to do is really just stay focused on God Himself. Because if everything else goes away, we still have it.
Yeah, okay, what Jeremy's referring to is verse 24. You guide me, your translation says, you guide me with your plan. CSB says, you guide me with your counsel, and afterward you will take me up in glory. That's very reminiscent of Psalm 119. Your word's a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. That what he's saying here is, I am not going to figure this out, but when I rely on your plan, when I figure out that whatever your plan is, whatever your goal is, whatever your ultimate thing is, you have a plan, and that ultimately I'll be with you in glory.
It's such a process, because God's asking us to, we're in this physical world.
Yeah.
All the physical things. And that's the only thing we know.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say something really stupid. I love my horse.
It's not stupid.
But there's some things I have to weigh. I mean, I'm not saying get rid of him, but it's like, but God, you're really more important. But
Oh, yeah.
That's like a big thing for me to say.
Sure.
Because it draws, I mean, in my older life now.
Oh, yeah.
But it's like, I have to think that this is something that I've been able to have now as I'm older, but God still has to be more important.
Oh, yeah.
Than that, because this is something that I've loved since I was a kid, and then have it now, but I could have that easily. Is that not going to take away my heart? You know what I mean? 'Cause
Well, yeah.
I know it sounds stupid.
No. Whatever phase of life we're in, it may be your horse at your age, it may be your career at your age, it may be your education at whatever it is. Those things are important to us, and I don't think God minds that those things are important to us. It's just, is He more important? Is He the most important? Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness. Not seek whenever you can the kingdom. It's put God first, and remember that He guides us with His counsel, even in our bad moments. Sometimes even as Linda's talking about, sometimes those things that are important to us can become our distractions. That we have to sometimes remind ourselves, this isn't the thing. This is a gift from God. This whatever it is, this blessing, this whatever, is something God allows me to have, and I'm so grateful for that, but it's not the number one thing because it might go away. I mean, sorry. Not to take a shot at Flicka here, but I'm just saying.
It's
Gus.
Gus.
Okay, yeah.
I really like that you frame this to the Christian experience because it really is the walk. At the end of the day, God is our single source. It's easy just to say, just turn to God. But when we walk outside the walls, the majority,
Yeah.
numerically speaking, is telling us the way the world's path of least resistance is the way you should go.
Yep.
So even as Christians, we tend to set each other up for, hey, I can handle that better than you. And that's a shame, but we do it. Disciples, the apostles did that.
Yeah.
I'm a little better than that one, and I'm a little better. We do that with him, and so we look at that when someone struggles or someone maybe trips up and say, oh, they lost their faith.
Yeah.
No, this is an example. That's not the case. We're gonna have struggles, and that's reality. So I'm really glad you point out because that's for all of us and what the circumstance is.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I think I mentioned a few weeks ago the guy at Bear Valley when I was in school that said, "Why don't you just let God handle it?" I knew what he meant, and he helped me through a moment there. But sometimes we say that to people, and you say, when I'm struggling, I just let God handle it, and then you walk away and leave that person going, "Dude, I'm trying that." I mean, it's not like I haven't tried to let God handle it. So yeah, this psalm is a realization that we do this. He does it in 28 verses. he goes up and down through. I'm good. I'm not good. I'm good. I'm angry, because that's what we do. But ultimately, we end up with that moment that I know God's in charge. Verse 28 ends this way: "But as for me, God's presence is good. I have made the Lord God my refuge, so I can tell about all you do." That ought to be our focus. And like I said, that's super easy to say, but read through that. That psalm shows us. The last verse is one of those easy Christian-y things to say, but the rest of the psalm shows us it's a really hard road sometimes. But we gotta stay on the road. That's ultimately where it goes. Okay, Psalm 121. This one is another reorientation, but it's a little bit different. This one is short. This one is one of the Psalms of Ascent. What's interesting about this psalm, I think anyway, is that at Queen Elizabeth's, her silver jubilee was in 1977. That's so crazy to think about. She was the queen forever. But this was also at her funeral. They sang a song that included these words from Psalm 121. "I lift my eyes to the hills from where," I'm sure in Britain they said "from whence is my help to come. The Lord shall watch your going out and your coming in from this time forevermore." Now, I have no idea what Queen Elizabeth's faith situation was, but you can see why this would be at a funeral, but at any sort of significant moment that you would look to a passage like this. The Lord will watch your going out and your coming in. Just this phrase, the Lord will watch. And that's really the point or the focus of Psalm 121. These Psalms of Ascent, I think we may have talked about this, but just briefly, the Psalms of Ascent is you're going up. These, when the pilgrims, the sojourners, whatever they were at any given time, the Jewish people had to make these trips to Jerusalem. And it's up not because it's going north, because it's south of where a lot of them live, but it's altitude. So they're literally making an ascent up to Jerusalem. And it was usually a return for a festival or one of the feasts that they had to return for. But sometimes it was in those moments of just coming back to Jerusalem after they've been away. So there's a little bit of there's a joy in this, but there's also, as we've looked at with these reorientation idea, there's a recollection or a realization maybe of where we were. And now look where we're coming. And look at what the promise is in front of us. The reason I think these relate is for this point. These are psalms written by people who are on a journey to a better place. That's who we are. We're the journeyers. We're the sojourners now. We're the ones trying to get from, even if life is good for you all the time, you're still trying to get to a better place. You're trying to get to the place where God is, right? Now, what we see in this psalm is you can see the experience of the struggle. Look at, I'm just going to read this straight through. I lift my eyes toward the mountains. Where will my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will, okay, now I want to tell you this too. From verses 1 and 2 seem to be, it's kind of a literary thing, Hebrew literary thing. Verse 1 and 2 seem to be one person, and then 3 through 8 seems to be somebody else's response. I mean, that's kind of how the structure is. We don't see it as much in English, but it's one person is saying, I'm trying to get to Jerusalem, I'm trying to get to this better place. God's my helper. And then the other character or whatever in the psalm then fills them in with all the, here's how you're going to do this. Verse 2, my help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Verse 3, he will not allow your, see, it's kind of switches. He's talking to the other person. He will not allow your foot to slip. Your protector will not slumber. Indeed, the protector of Israel does not slumber or sleep. The Lord protects you. The Lord is a shelter right by your side. The sun will not strike you by day or the moon by night. The Lord will protect you from all harm. He will protect your life. The Lord will protect your coming and going, both now and forevermore. So this seems to be a conversation between people. The first person, the first 2 verses, is the person just kind of going, I've got to get there. I've got to get to this place. I got to remember God is my helper. Then 3 through 8 is the reminder that Jerusalem, this place where God is, this place where we as a nation gather for our worship, for our community, for whatever, that's our promise. Why is this significant? Why does this, if you were a Jewish person, put yourself back in 700 BC or whatever, why is this psalm important to you? What's the reminder there? Yeah, there's a reminder that they've been left out, that they've been away from God before and tried to work their way back. What else? When else did that happen? When else were Jews away from Jerusalem? Yeah, about a zillion times. Well, no, not that many, but they have been away from Jerusalem many times. So in this Psalm of Ascent, there's that reminder. And I'm not sure when this is written. It's a Psalm of Asaph, so it's probably prior to captivity. It's probably in David's era, somewhere in there. But there's still this understanding as the Jews would read this later in history, or forward in history. This is a reminder, because I'm going to have to tell you, the reason this matters to them, because it matters to us, the reason it matters to us is because we worry. We struggle with our kids, we struggle with our jobs, we worry about our aging parents, we worry about our finances, we worry about so many different things. And verses 1 and 2 could just be any of us saying, I'm trying to get to a better place, but I don't know how to get there. I'm worried I'm not sure I can do it. And then the rest of the psalm is, look what God does for you. I don't know how your translation does it, but in verses 3 and 4, God's called the protector. And the CSB translates the word 6 times as protector or protect. The word is shamar. It's a Hebrew word. Your translation may use guard, may use keep, may use different words. But 6 times in 8 verses, the writer is making a point that God is your protector. Really 6 times in 6 verses. Because the first 2, the person's saying, how am I going to get to where I need to be? The last 6 verses are a reminder that God is your keeper. I lift my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? We've read this already. But it's just a reminder. in your moment of whatever down moment it is, even as you're trying to come out of it, again, think of this first individual, the first character in the psalm, making their way to where they want to be, but still kind of going, God's going to get me here. God's going to get me. And the other person comes in and says, yeah, look what God's done for you. God will always take care of you. When the idea is, again, this kind of goes back to the idea of control. These sojourners didn't have control. And the Jewish people, if you read through history, some of those journeys to Jerusalem were treacherous. Because who else knew they were going to Jerusalem 3 times a year? Bad guys. So they'd wait on the roads. They'd wait and they'd hijack people. I mean, there was all sorts of things that happened. You read different scholars, this idea of the hills. I lift my eyes toward the hills, toward the mountains. Some scholars say that this is the idea of I lift my eyes up toward God. Others will say this is the idea is I'm keeping a watch. I'm looking up into the hills because the hills were where the bad guys were. They were hiding in there. Hills are where the pagans went and did their worship practices. So some scholars think this may be the person showing their concern, which I kind of think makes sense through the rest of the psalm. There's this idea that I'm not sure what's coming, but the overall picture of this is that he protects us or he keeps us. Your translation may say, what does that mean? And we have to wrap up here. What does it mean that God keeps us? Watches over us, protects us, there with us. Verse 7 says, the Lord will protect you from all harm, from all evil. Is that true? Anybody had any harm happen to him? Is God not watching?
Like he redeemed the people out of Egypt. He purchased them and pulled them out. He's not taking his purchase back.
Yeah.
He's not saying, well, I'm done with these people. The faulty purchase, they're defective. I'm taking them back. He's
Yeah.
right? That's the meaning of redeem. He's purchased us. He's keeping us.
Right.
Even if we break, even if, there's a defect here or there, he's not taking us back.
That's good. Straight up stealing that. Okay, so I want you to think about that, about this idea. For this, we'll come back next week and we'll finish Psalm 121 and then we'll move on to a couple more. But I want you to think about this idea. He keeps us. The verse says he keeps us from all evil, keeps us from all harm. I want to read you a quote before we go, because we'll come back to this. This is from the guy, what's his name? Eugene Peterson, the guy that wrote The Message. Here it is, and we'll close. The promise of the psalm, and both Hebrew and Christians have always read it this way, is not we shall never stub our toes, but that no injury, no illness, no accident, no distress will have evil power over us. That is, will be able to separate us from God's purposes in our lives. I think that's the idea of God keeping us. That even though we do have our defects, God doesn't, send us back to Amazon. We don't get returned. God doesn't walk away. He keeps us. Doesn't mean life's perfect, as we've seen, but it does give us hope. Okay, any other thoughts? Good, because we're out of time.